part two. Got the nut off. Take the yoke off. Then I'll take this pinion support off and pull the pinion gear. I always mark it so I know I'm putting it in the right way again. Keep your shims here together. Pinion gear. Mark your caps. I just mark one. That way I know where they go. They got to go back on the same side as they came off of. And they'll only go on one direction, you know, so, but yeah, whatever you gotta do to make sure they go in the right spot. Now, take the bolts out. First I'll take these bolts out for these clips here, that for the adjuster on the side to adjust the bearing preload and to set the backlash, and then I'll take the cap bolts off, and then the carrier, differential carrier will come out. And there you have your housing, your pinion gear and support, differential with the ring gear. I'll remove the ring gear from the differential by removing all those 10 bolts. Now I got the old pinion gear here, and the inner bearing still looks good, and I don't want to replace that because I don't want to put out the money for one. I'd rather use that on polar pops. So I'm going to remove that bearing and put it on the new pinion bearing. And to do that, you can do that by using the proper tools, which in this case is a hammer and a chisel. So just put your chisel carefully in here against the inner part of the bearing where it's not going to damage it, and against the pinion head and not on the gear. It's a slow process, but you just slowly wedge it in there. Keep working it. It's almost off. There you go. Less than 5 minutes. Here's the new ring and pinion, forward 9-inch, 5.14 ratio from that same company, Quick Performance. I don't know if they make them or if they have someone make them for them, but the price was pretty cheap. I've never tried them before. I thought I'd give them a shot, so we'll see how they work out. I've counted the teeth. I got 36 on the ring gear, 7 on the pinion, so that's 5.14. I always check to make sure. Now I'm going to install the old inner pinion bearing onto the pinion gear. Installed. Now I agree, it is a slow process. It took about 5 minutes, but it just shows you can take it off and put it on with the wrong tools. Then you go ahead and install your solid sleeve with the shims. Take your pinion support, slide it on there. And then take your yoke. I put a little silicone in there on the splines to help it from not leaking. Some oil around the edge. Slide it down on your pinion gear. Then take your pinion nut. I'm reusing the same nut, so I put a little Loctite in there. Put it on. and go ahead and drive it on home. Another professional installation. Seems good to me. Preload seems good. No play, slop. It's good enough for government work. Yeah, it'll be just fine. Now I got my new ring gear on the Detroit True Track differential. That's by far the best traction lock type limited slip differential that I've ever used. But I got 3 bolts in there. Just go around and slowly bring it up evenly until you got it seated on. Then I'll go back around and put Loctite on all the bolts, put them in there and torque them down. Okay, so I got my pinion gear and support and yoke on there, tightened up, everything's ready to go there. Got my new ring gear, bolts, torqued and everything, that's ready to go. So it's ready to start putting the pieces back into the housing. I think it's about time for a little lunch. I think I may go with 2 burritos today. I'm feeling kind of hungry. I usually just have the 1 bean and cheese burrito, but I think I may go with 2 today. Okay, I've got everything here ready for assembly. Here's the housing. Here's the shims for the go on right here, and then you put your pinion support in there, and that gives you your pinion depth. The shim spaces it in and out. This is the same housing, so putting a new ring and pinion, almost every time you can just use the shims that were there, put it in, and almost pretty much every time I've done it, it's been fine. The pattern's been fine, so we'll put those shims in it, put the pinion support, and see where we're at once we get the carrier in there. Okay, I've got the pinion support in there, bolts torqued to 35 foot-pounds, and now time to start on the carrier. Got your differential carrier set in there. You put on your main caps, your bearing races, and these threaded collars on each side. You adjust those in and out to adjust the backlash and bearing preload. So I'm going to put this cap on there, and then I'll start checking the pinion depth and bearing preload and backlash. Okay, now I got the rings turned in on each side, and I've got a little bit of bearing preload on it and some backlash here. That's pretty close, probably where I'm going to want it. So now I'm going to put some of that grease on the gear here and check the pattern, wear pattern for the tooth contact. I can already tell you, without putting the grease on there, I can see the marking. It's hard for you to see probably, but the depth is just right. It's right in the center of the tooth. That's where you want the marking. Needs to be right pretty much in the center of the tooth is best. I got a little bit too much backlash. I'll tighten it up a little bit, and it should be just about right. So yeah, look for it. That's how I usually, as long as it's near the center of the teeth, that's good enough for me. Okay, it's ready to go back in. Everything's torqued down. Bearing preload's all good. Backlash, pinion depth, gear pattern's all good. So the installation is the reverse of taking it apart. Put your third member in, your axles, drive shaft, and get her done. You get the drift. All right, third member's in, and everything's coming together pretty good. Oh, mama! Oh, I knew I shouldn't have had that second burrito. The show's over. What? The show's over.